Chapter 1. The summer festival was Giselle's least favorite day of the year. It wasn't the noise that bothered her, though the village square was filled with drunken laughter and off-key singing. Nor was it the heat, though sweat trickled down her back as she maneuvered through the crowd with a tray of empty mugs. No, what Giselle hated was the reminder of how little had changed. Another year gone, and she was still serving ale at her father's tavern, still counting coppers, still watching younger girls being courted, while she remained firmly on the shelf at 23. 3 more ales for the blacksmith's table, her father called over the din. Giselle nodded, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. The tavern was packed to the rafters. Every villager in Meadowvale, eager to celebrate the one day a year when Lord Vashael's collectors distributed gold instead of demanding it. "Did you hear?" Old Martha leaned across the bar, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They say the Lord himself might attend this year." Giselle snorted as she filled the mugs from a wooden barrel. "The Ancient One hasn't shown his face in 50 years. Why would he start now?" "Because," Martha's eyes gleamed with excitement. "2 of his kind were seen in the western woods yesterday. Fae nobility, with those strange horses that leave no tracks. Maybe he's finally tired of hiding in that stone fortress." Giselle handed over the drinks without comment. Stories about Lord Vashael were as common as cobblestones and twice as dull. In her lifetime, he'd been rumored to be everything from a shapeshifter who walked among them in disguise, to a withered husk kept alive only by dark magic. The truth, her grandmother insisted, was far more mundane. Lord Vashael was simply old, even by Fae standards, and preferred solitude to the company of humans he would outlive by centuries. Giselle stepped outside for a breath of air. The weight of responsibilities momentarily lifted from her shoulders. The village square had been transformed for the festival, with summer flowers strung between cottages and paper lanterns waiting to be lit at dusk. Children raced between market stalls, faces sticky with honeyed treats. It would be beautiful, if only she could enjoy it. But with 5 younger siblings to feed, and a father whose lungs grew weaker with each passing winter, Giselle's dreams had long ago been sacrificed on the altar of practicality. A hush fell over the square. The sudden silence was so absolute that Giselle could only hear the flutter of banners in the gentle breeze. Then she saw them, 4 riders on white horses that seemed to shimmer in the afternoon sunlight, their hooves making no sound as they approached the village square. 3 riders wore armor of silver that reflected the sun painfully, their faces obscured by helmets fashioned to resemble snarling beasts. But it was the central figure that drew every eye. He was massive, taller than any man Giselle had ever seen, with shoulders broad enough to cast shadows. Unlike his guards, his face was bare, revealing features so perfect they seemed carved from marble. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes that even at this distance appeared entirely black, like holes cut into the fabric of the world. His hair, so pale it was nearly white, fell past his shoulders in a straight cascade, contrasting sharply with the midnight blue of his silk robes. The pointed tips of his ears peeked through the silver-white strands, confirming what everyone already knew. Lord Vashael, ancient Fae and ruler of the lands for over 1,000 years, had broken his long isolation. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Giselle found herself moving forward, drawn by an invisible force. The ground beneath her feet felt unsteady. "Humans of Meadowvale," Lord Vashael's voice carried over the square, deep yet somehow hollow. I bring gifts in return for your loyal devotion. The Ancient One's gaze swept across the gathered villagers, his expression revealing nothing. When those black eyes passed over Giselle, she felt a jolt of something. Recognition, fear, desire. A mix of so many different emotions that it stole her breath away. The air between them seemed to vibrate, making Giselle's skin prickle and her heart race. Lord Vashael's perfect composure cracked, his pale lips parting in surprise. Without warning, a searing pain shot through Giselle's left palm. She cried out, clutching her hand to her chest as a pattern of crimson lines bloomed across her skin, intricate whorls forming a perfect circle. Across the square, Lord Vashael raised his own hand, staring at his palm with disbelief. No, he whispered, the single word carrying an eternity of refusal. Not now. Not after all this time. The armored Fae shifted uneasily, hands moving to the hilts of their swords. The crowd edged backward. Only Giselle remained frozen in place, her marked palm throbbing in time with her racing pulse. Lord Vashael's black eyes found hers once more, and this time there was no mistaking the emotion that flashed across his perfect features. Horror. Pure, undiluted horror. The crowd parted like water as Lord Vashael dismounted. His midnight blue robes billowed around him as he strode toward Giselle, each step leaving frost patterns on the cobblestones, despite the summer heat. Stand back, he commanded, and the villagers scrambled to obey, pressing against the walls of the nearby buildings. Only Giselle's father moved against the tide, stumbling forward on weakened legs. My lord, what is happening to my daughter? The Ancient One didn't spare him a glance. She is marked. She comes with me now. No! Her father's protest ended in a racking cough. You can't just take her. I can, Lord Vashael said flatly. And I must. Giselle found her voice at last. I don't understand. She held up her palm, the crimson mark pulsing in time with her heartbeat. What is this? What's happening? The Fae's face remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. The sacred bond, he said. A rare magic, even by my standards. It appears we are... His mouth twisted as if the word tasted foul. Mated. Giselle's vision swam. Mated? To this creature who had ruled their land since before her great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents were born? There must be some mistake, she whispered, though the burning in her palm suggested otherwise. There is no mistake, Lord Vashael said without an ounce of emotion. The mark does not lie. He extended his own hand, palm upward, revealing an identical crimson pattern. You will come with me to my estate, he continued, as if discussing the weather rather than the upheaval of her entire existence. Preparations will be made. I can't just leave, Giselle protested, clutching her skirt so tightly that her knuckles went white. My family depends on me. My father is ill. My siblings. They can be provided for. Name your price. Giselle blinked. My price? For your corporation. Gold? Security for your family? Name it so we may depart. This discussion grows tiresome. The casual dismissal of her life and concerns sparked something in Giselle. Tiresome, she repeated. Forgive me, my lord, if the sudden destruction of my entire life inconveniences you. The Ancient One's eyes widened fractionally, perhaps the first genuine surprise he'd shown in centuries. One of his armored guards made a strangled sound that might have been shock or suppressed laughter. "You dare speak to me thus?" Lord Vashael's voice dropped dangerously low. "I dare because apparently I'm stuck with you," Giselle shot back, beyond caring about consequences. "And if we're truly mated, then I deserve better than to be treated like a piece of furniture you've reluctantly purchased." For a long moment, Lord Vashael simply stared at her, his black eyes unreadable. Then one corner of his mouth twitched upward. Not quite a smile, but perhaps the memory of one. "Very well," he said. "You may state your terms before we depart." Giselle's mind raced. If she truly had no choice but to go with him, she could at least ensure her family's security. "I want my father healed completely," she said, "and an allowance provided for my family that will keep them in comfort for the rest of their lives." Lord Vashael nodded once. "Granted." "And education for my siblings. Real education. With teachers and books and stuff." "Is that all?" Giselle straightened her spine. "No. I also want protection and prosperity for all of Meadowvale. No more collectors, and better protection from bandits." "You bargained for strangers?" "They're not strangers. They're my people." Lord Vashael studied her for a long moment, his expression impossible to read. Finally, he nodded. "Your terms are acceptable, though unexpected. I had forgotten that humans sometimes think beyond their immediate kin." He turned to address the villagers. "Hear me, humans of Meadowvale. This woman is now under my protection, as are all of you by extension. The collection has ended." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the crowd, followed by hesitant cheers that quickly grew in volume. Giselle felt a surge of triumph, quickly tempered by the reality of what awaited her. She'd secured a future for her family and village, but at what personal cost? "I'll need to say goodbye," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady, "and gather my things." "You need nothing from this place," Lord Vashael replied dismissively. "All will be provided." "That's not the point. These are the people I love. I deserve a proper farewell." Something flickered in the depths of his black eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or a long-buried memory of what it meant to care for others. "1 hour," he said. "No more." He turned away, his guards following behind him. The mark on her palm throbbed, a reminder of the bond that now tied her to the ancient, fearsome creature who had just purchased her cooperation. Yet beneath her fear lurked something else, something she was reluctant to examine too closely. A strange, unwelcome flutter in her stomach whenever those dark eyes met hers. She was afraid of Lord Vashael, but some treacherous part of her was drawn to him. True to his word, Lord Vashael returned precisely 1 hour later. Giselle had spent the time in a blur of tearful goodbyes. Her father had begged her not to go, then begged to accompany her, then finally collapsed into resigned silence when she explained the terms she'd negotiated. "You've always been too clever for your own good." He embraced her with frail arms. "Your mother would be proud." Now she stood at the edge of the village square, a small bundle of keepsakes and clothes clutched in her hands. Lord Vashael raised an eyebrow at the pitiful package, but said nothing. Instead, he extended his hand. "We travel not by horse but by wind," he explained when she hesitated. "Take my hand or the journey will dismember you." Giselle swallowed hard and placed her hand in his. His skin was cool but not cold, firm and smooth like polished stone. His fingers closed around hers, causing a tingle of warmth to race up her arm. The world passed in a blur, speeding by so fast that Giselle thought that she would be ill. Giselle gasped, her knees buckling as solid ground appeared beneath her feet. Only Lord Vashael's swift arm around her waist kept her from collapsing. Many find the first passage difficult, he said, continuing to support her until her breathing steadied. When Giselle could finally focus on her surroundings, her breath caught for entirely different reasons. They stood in a vast entrance hall made from white marble, so highly polished that their reflection stared back at them from the floor. Columns soared upward, disappearing into shadow, each one carved to resemble a tree with branches that spread across the ceiling. Tiny points of light, like captured stars, dotted the stone canopy above. "Welcome to my estate," Lord Vashael said, releasing her. "A servant will show you to your chambers." As if summoned by his words, a tall figure glided toward them. At first glance, Giselle thought it was human. Then she noticed the two fluid movements, the eyes that reflected light like a cat's, the fingers that were just slightly too long. "This is Lysandra," Lord Vashael said. "She will attend to your needs." The Fae woman bowed, her silver hair cascading over her shoulders. "My lord, and honored guest?" She glanced at Vashael. "She bears the mark," he said flatly. "See that she is suitably attired and instructed in basic protocol before the evening meal." Without another word or glance at Giselle, he strode away, his robes billowing behind him. Lysandra's eyes widened. Her gaze dropped to Giselle's hand, where the crimson mark was clearly visible. "The sacred bond," she whispered with fear and awe. "After all these centuries." "So everyone keeps saying," Giselle muttered, though no one bothers to explain what it actually means. "You truly don't know?" "The sacred bond is the rarest of Fae magics. A connection forged by fate itself. Legend says it appears only once in 1,000 years, binding two souls who are destined to balance each other." Giselle thought of Lord Vashael's cold demeanor, his dismissive attitude, and his obvious distaste for their connection. He doesn't seem interested in being balanced. A fleeting smile crossed Lysandra's face. Lord Vashael has lived over 1,000 years. Change does not come easily to the ancient ones. She gestured toward a sweeping staircase. "Come, we have much to do before dinner." As Giselle followed her guide deeper into the estate, she couldn't help wondering what fate could possibly see in her that would complement the ancient Fae Lord. She was nothing. A tavern maid from a forgettable village, with no special talent or beauty. Yet the mark on her palm pulsed steadily, a constant reminder that something beyond her understanding had tied her to Lord Vashael, whether either of them liked it or not. The chambers assigned to Giselle were larger than her family's entire home in Meadowvale. The main room featured floor-to-ceiling windows that revealed a spectacular view of mountains, their peaks covered in mist. A massive four-poster bed dominated one wall, draped in blue silk that matched the plush carpet. "The bathing chamber is through there," Lysandra said, pointing to an arched doorway. "And the dressing room beyond. Your clothes have already been prepared." "How could you possibly have prepared clothes?" Giselle asked, bewildered. "You didn't even know I was coming." Lysandra's lips curved into a smile. Lord Vashael had many gowns prepared centuries ago, just in case his fated mate did one day appear. Before Giselle could process this disturbing information, Lysandra was guiding her toward the bathing chamber. "A hot bath has been drawn. I'll help you prepare for dinner." The bathing chamber turned out to be a room centered around a pool large enough to swim in, with steaming water that smelled of unfamiliar flowers. "I can bathe myself," Giselle protested as Lysandra began unfastening her simple dress. "Not to our standards. You smell of human sweat. Lord Vashael's sense of smell is far more accurate than yours. Trust me, this is necessary." Giselle was too exhausted to argue. She surrendered to the Fae woman's hands. Lysandra at least allowed Giselle to wash herself, shoving various oils and shampoo into the human woman's hands. Giselle was then guided to the dressing room, where Lysandra presented her with a gown of deepest emerald, the fabric so fine it seemed to flow like water through her fingers. "This will complement your coloring," Lysandra said, "and match your eyes." The gown clung to curves Giselle hadn't known she possessed, the neckline lower than anything she'd ever worn. When she was finally allowed to look in a mirror, Giselle barely recognized herself. The plain tavern maid had been transformed into someone else entirely, someone whose thick chestnut hair cascaded in glossy waves over bare shoulders, whose green eyes seemed larger and brighter, whose skin glowed with health and youth. "There," Lysandra said with satisfaction. "Now you look worthy of the sacred bond." A bell tolled somewhere in the depths of the castle. "It's time." Lysandra adjusted a final fold in Giselle's gown. "He's waiting for you." The dining hall matched the grandeur of the entrance. Black marble walls rose to a ceiling adorned with constellations Giselle had never seen, stars that shifted and moved as she watched. A long table of polished obsidian dominated the room, set with dishes of silver and crystal. Lord Vashael stood at the head of the table. He had changed from his traveling clothes into formal attire, a high-collared jacket of midnight blue that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. His platinum hair had been pulled back from his face, secured at the nape of his neck with a silver clasp. Giselle's breath caught in her throat. He was beautiful in the way dangerous things were. A storm on the horizon, a predator at rest. His black eyes widened as they swept over her, lingering for a heartbeat too long before his expression settled back into cool detachment. "You are punctual." His deep voice echoed in the vast chamber. Giselle wasn't sure if it was a compliment or observation. "Thank you for providing this." She gestured vaguely at her dress. "Your presentation reflects on my household," he replied dismissively. "Sit." With a wave of his hand, a chair slid back at the opposite end of the table. The moment she settled into the chair, she felt it. A subtle shift in the air between them. A tightening of the invisible thread that connected them. Lord Vashael's jaw tightened, the only indication he felt it too. He took his own seat with fluid grace, his movements precise and controlled. Servants, or what Giselle assumed were servants, though their ethereal beauty rivaled Lysandra's, appeared silently from the alcoves, bearing platters of food unlike anything Giselle had ever seen. Fruits that glowed, meats garnished with flowers, and wines that changed color as they were poured. Giselle hesitantly took a bite of what appeared to be meat. Flavor exploded across her tongue. She closed her eyes, momentarily lost in the sensation. When she opened them, she found Lord Vashael watching her with an intensity that sent warmth flooding her cheeks. "You enjoy our food," he said. "It's incredible." Giselle took another bite. If only the rest of her family were there to taste it. They ate in silence for several minutes. Giselle found herself studying him silently. The precise way he held his knife, the occasional twitch of his jaw, the strange stillness that surrounded him. "You have questions," he said finally, settling down his goblet. "Ask them." Giselle put down her fork. "Why did the bond connect us?" "I have asked myself the same question," he replied, his tone dry. "The bond does not explain itself. It simply is." "Then what will happen to us now?" Lord Vashael studied her for a long moment, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "The bond creates certain imperatives. Physical proximity is required, especially in the early stages. Prolonged separation results in pain, eventually becoming unbearable." "So, that's why you brought me here?" "Yes." His eyes darkened further, becoming endless pits that swallowed light. "And because the bond will demand consummation." "Consummation?" Giselle tilted her head. "You mean?" "Sexual intercourse," he said without flinching. "The bond will compel us both, with increasing urgency until the requirement is met." Giselle's mouth went dry. The thought of being intimate with this ancient, powerful being sent a confusing mix of fear and anticipation coursing through her veins. "And if we resist?" she managed to ask. "Pain, perhaps even madness." Lord Vashael's fingers tightened around his goblet. "The bond is not concerned with choice or consent. It is a force of nature, like gravity." "That's barbaric," Giselle whispered. "It is ancient," he corrected, "from a time before my kind developed the concept of individual will." He rose abruptly, moving to stand before the hearth, his back to her. In the firelight, his broad shoulders cast long shadows across the floor. "So we're stuck with each other," she said. "Forever?" "Yes, though your forever is significantly shorter than mine." A chill ran through her at the reminder of their different lifespans. "I'll grow old and die while you remain unchanged?" "Yes." Lord Vashael shook his head. "It is too soon to discuss such matters. You should rest. It has been a long day." He moved toward her, extending his hand. "I will escort you back to your chambers." Giselle hesitated before placing her hand in his. The moment their skin touched, the mark flared with heat, sending a shock of pleasure up her arm. Lord Vashael's fingers tightened, his breath catching slightly. The walk back to her chambers passed in tense silence. Each step seemed to increase the pull between them, an invisible force drawing them closer despite their mutual reluctance. At her door, Lord Vashael released her hand with obvious effort, stepping back to put distance between them. The sudden absence of his touch left Giselle feeling strange. "Rest well," he said stiffly. "Lysandra will attend to you soon." He turned to leave, then paused, his broad back still facing her. "The bond will grow more insistent tonight. If the discomfort becomes unbearable, you may send for me." Before Giselle could respond, he was gone, moving with that unnatural speed that reminded her he was not human. Giselle woke up gasping, flushed and feverish. She twisted in the sheets, now damp with sweat. The mark on her palm blazed with crimson light, pulsing in time with her racing heart. Each throb sent waves of heat through her core. This was more than simple desire. It was elemental, primal, a need as basic as breathing. Giselle bit her lip to keep from crying out, determined to endure. She would not send for him, would not surrender to this ancient magic that cared nothing for choice or dignity. The minutes stretched into an hour. The need grew worse. Not better. Her skin felt too tight, too sensitive. Every brush of the silk sheets against her body was both torture and not enough. There was only one thing that would quench this fire. Just when Giselle thought she might lose her mind, a soft knock came at the door. "Enter," she managed to gasp. Lord Vashael stepped into the room, his massive frame filling the doorway. He too showed signs of the fever, a thin sheen of sweat on his brow, his platinum hair loose around his shoulders, his chest rising and falling with rapid breaths. He wore only loose black trousers, his upper body bare in the moonlight that streamed through the windows. The sculpted perfection of his torso would have taken Giselle's breath away, even without the bond's influence. "You did not send for me," he said, his deep voice rougher than usual. "I thought I could endure it," she said, pushing herself up on trembling arms. His black eyes swept over her, taking in her flushed skin, the dampness of her nightdress, the wild disarray of her hair. "Foolish," he hissed. He remained by the door, maintaining distance despite the obvious effort it cost him. "I can leave, if you wish to continue your resistance, though I do not recommend it." The fever surged at his words, as if the bond objected. Giselle gasped, clutching at the sheets. "Stay," she whispered. "Please." Lord Vashael moved toward the bed, each step measured and controlled despite the hunger evident in his eyes. He stopped at the edge, still keeping a sliver of distance between them. "We need not do this," he said, his voice strained. "The fever can be endured, for a time." "Let's just do this." Giselle pushed aside the sheets. She rose to her knees on the bed, the silk nightdress clinging to her sweat-dampened skin. For a moment, Lord Vashael remained perfectly still, his black eyes unreadable. Then, with a sound that was half growl, half sigh, he closed the remaining distance between them. His hands, when they finally touched her, were cool against her fevered skin. Massive, yet gentle. They cupped her face, tilting it upward as he bent to claim her mouth with his. The kiss ignited something beyond the bond fever, a genuine desire that had been building since the moment their eyes first met in the village square. His lips were firm yet soft, demanding yet restrained, as if he was holding back the full force of his passion. Giselle's hands found his bared chest, exploring the hard planes of muscle, tracing the ancient scars that mapped his long existence. His skin was cool to the touch, yet radiated power. The moment her marked palm pressed against his chest, directly over his heart, the bond flared between them. Crimson light bathed the chamber as their marks synchronized, pulsing with the same rhythm. Lord Vashael groaned, a sound of surrender that seemed torn from the depths of his being. His control cracked, centuries of restraint giving way to raw need. His arms encircled her, pulling her against the hard length of his body. Giselle felt herself drowning in sensation. The cool silk of his hair between her fingers, the taste of him on her tongue, the hardness of his desire pressed against her through the thin fabric of her nightdress. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, laying her back against the pillows with surprising gentleness. His muscular body covered hers, his weight supported on his forearms as he gazed down at her. In the crimson glow of their marks, his face was transformed. The cold mask had fallen away, revealing a hunger and vulnerability that stole her breath away. For a moment, she glimpsed at what he might have been before the centuries wore him down. Bright, passionate, and capable of more than detached coldness. "Vashael," she whispered. His name felt right on her tongue. He let out a low moan. Lord Vashael lowered himself to lie beside her, one arm draped across her waist. You are unexpected. In what way? Giselle asked, her voice still breathless. In every way, he replied, his gaze traveling over her flushed face, her tousled hair. A smile tugged at her lips. Is that a compliment? The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. Yes. They lay in comfortable silence, their breathing gradually slowing to normal, but the marks on their palms still glowed faintly. As exhaustion finally claimed her, Giselle's last thought was that while she had not chosen this path, perhaps there was a way forward. Lord Vashael was cold and distant, damaged by centuries of solitude. But in those brief moments when his control had shattered, she had glimpsed something else beneath the ancient ice, something that might, with time and patience, remember how to feel love once more.
Thank you for listening to Maid to the Ancient-Fae by Beatrix Steam. To listen to the full story with all the spicy scenes, please search for Maid to the Ancient-Fae by Beatrix Steam on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. Find more spicy stories and free ebooks at beatrixsteam.com.